Have a course on your heart? Today I'm chatting with Melanie Battistelli all about launching courses and how to use social media to get it done. Melanie is a wife, girl mom, former teacher, certified online business manager, and course and launch strategist. She is the real deal. And after leaving the classroom in 2022, Melanie has become passionate about taking her love for learning and educating others by helping course and membership creators launch their programs. Melanie also specializes in hiring freelancers for busy CEOs and streamlining systems in their business processes. She lives in Northern Virginia with her husband, 2 girls, their dog, and cat. So teacher authors, go ahead and reheat that cup of coffee because I'm your host, Cassandra Foster, and we're about to get schooled in socials. Welcome back to Schooled in Socials, everyone. Today, I'm super excited to have Melanie Battistelli here with me. She is an amazing expert on all things launching courses. And so today we're going to be chatting all about how you can leverage your social media presence in order to launch your course. So welcome, Melanie. So happy to have you.
Yay! I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. It's been a long time coming. We've been talking about this for months, I think.
I know we have, definitely. I think we've had this on the calendar for quite a while.
We have.
So for our listeners, could you just tell them a little bit about yourself and your business and what you do?
Absolutely. So I am an ex-high school teacher. I taught high school for 12 years. I left the classroom in 2022. This is my second full year out of the classroom. And I started as a general virtual assistant and then kind of bounced around to some different things that I dabbled in. Like, for example, I tried like social media and being a social media manager myself. It was just not, I just wasn't good at it. It wasn't for me. And then I eventually landed in more like project management. Mm-hmm. Which led to me seeking more of a certification as ex-teacher, current teacher at the time. I, love taking classes and learning. So I got a certification in online business management, which I think was really helpful. I mean, it was awesome to learn on the job, but I just also like to keep learning things in a more official capacity. Mm-hmm. So I finished that up. And then I also took a really amazing certification course in specifically course launch management and course launch strategy, which talks about not just like managing the moving parts of a launch, but also like the strategy leading up to the launch runway and things like that. It was really unique and different. And I learned a lot from that one too. So yeah, now I have retainer clients in the online business management space. And I also do side projects for launch management. We actually got to work together this summer with a mutual client who I helped with her course launch as a sort of a one-off project.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. So Melanie and I knew each other beforehand, but then we actually got a chance to work together professionally, which was really awesome. And so I kind of got some insight on what it's like to launch a course, and I got to help manage the whole social media end of it, which was really cool because that was the first time that I've worked on promoting and launching a course as a social media manager. So Melanie was amazing making all of that happen. So Melanie, we're talking about launching courses and using social media to do that. But before we get too far, do you need social media to launch a course?
Well, that's a really loaded question, right? Need, like you don't need it. All you need is an audience that is engaged, whether that is on social media, your email list, or somewhere else, like if you were doing more like a live actual launch to people. So need, no, but is it helpful? Absolutely, like 100%, 1,000% helpful. Because even this summer, with a couple different launches that I helped in, I mean, there is a marketed difference between people who are willing to, hop on stories and show their face on social media versus people who are just launching to an email list. So I don't know that you need it, but I can almost guarantee that if you build an engaged social media following, it doesn't even matter how big it is. Engagement is more important than anything. I mean, it is definitely going to help with your launch and people, being willing to purchase from you, whether it's a course or, something else smaller.
Yeah, because definitely I think you're just launching to your email list, at least in my perspective. I feel like that's a little less personal than social media is, because with social media and you're engaged on it, you really get to connect to people, talk to people in the DMs and things like that. So I can definitely see why there's a marked difference between using it versus not using it as a way to get your course out to your audience, for sure.
Yeah. And I think it also really depends on your audience because, for example, a lot of people that you and I work with are part of the Teachers Pay Teachers crowd. So it's more of a business to customer relationship or a B2C relationship. So I've seen email be really kind of the sticking point for TPT people, tending to sell their course more, but social media obviously definitely helps. But since the summer has started, I've actually been working with a new client since May who's not in the TPT space at all, but she has a really large group of online courses and also a really large social media following, over 250,000. And we've been using UTM codes for all of her stories and static posts. And her email list is pretty, well, I don't want to say it's small, but compared to her social media following, which is 250,000, her email list is only about 9,000 people. Mm-hmm. So her social media is actually crushing it. 70% of her purchases actually come directly from what she shares in stories and or her link in bio. But she's a personality. So she's just naturally, going to do well mm-hmm. selling on social media. So I think it also depends on your audience a little bit. But her email list alone would not have generated the multi-six-figure launch she had this summer. She needed social media for sure.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of preferences when it comes to what social media platform works better when you're launching a course? Facebook groups, Instagram, TikTok, or does it not matter?
I think it matters when you consider where your audience is. It all goes back to a little bit of market research and trying to find out where your audience is mostly, because it kind of goes back to also age, right? A lot of people closer to our age are on Instagram. Mm-hmm. But if your audience happens to be in their 40s and 50s, mostly, you might be playing to more of a Facebook group kind of crowd. And I know a lot of people, right, in their mid 30s or even a little bit older like me, don't really use TikTok. But if you're 10 years younger, you're going to need to show up and if your audience is hanging out on TikTok, that's where you should show up. So I think it just depends where your audience is, not necessarily the platform. I don't know anything about TikTok. I dabble and watch there
right
sometimes, but I am personally not on TikTok.
Yeah. And I think that was when we worked together. I loved that the first thing we did was we dove into those analytics because we were looking at multiple social media platforms and just seeing where was it most active? Where did we have more people? And so then we use that to our advantage. And so definitely what you do as strategy for launching a course goes a lot along with looking at all of your insights. And so that's what I really loved at the beginning is I got to dive in and give you all of those insights that I had been pulling all along so we could make a decision what direction to go in.
Right. Because she could have went a couple different directions because she had a very active, free Facebook group because, you'd been cultivating that relationship for quite some time. So yeah, we really had to try and decide what was the best way to go.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you've been talking a lot about people who are like willing to connect and go live, things like that, kind of on Instagram during their course launch. How can people kind of get comfortable with going live and showing their face on social media? Because I know a lot of the teacherpreneurs I talk with, that's something we talk about with social media, is that they're not always 100% comfortable getting in front of that camera and talking to their audience. So how do we help them do that for a launch?
Yeah, you just have to kind of do it. Like
Yeah.
the worst answer ever. But okay, here's what I would say to like do actual like concrete. Don't wait until the last second where you're like, okay, I have to start getting on stories because like I'm launching in 3 days and they have to be really good and blah, 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 blah. Like start it ahead of time. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. You know, it's like the old adage. And when you take a break, it's hard to get back into it. Like, you know, and you were really busy this summer and I was very busy this summer. I don't think I showed my face on stories once in July. Like, I feel like it was just like a crazy time. And, you know, when I wanted to start getting back into it this month, since my oldest daughter went to school and I just, you know, had a little bit more time, I didn't feel like doing it. I was like, I don't have anything to say. Not that I'm even, you know, launching anything specific. Like I'm working on some digital products, but you don't just want to like come out of nowhere and be like, hey, buy my stuff. All right, bye. See you later.
So I definitely think if you are thinking about launching a course, you want to, and you're going to use your social media as a way to engage and connect with your audience in order to sell that course, you want to make sure the few months leading up to your course launch, you are being consistent with your social media. You want to be sharing about yourself, sharing educational content. I mean, teasing that upcoming course launch and just getting people to engage with you and learn about you and learn from you. Because like you said, like jumping on 3 days before is not a strong strategy because people are going to be like, where did this person come out of the woodwork, out of all of the noise like that I'm already seeing on Instagram or Facebook? And why are they trying to sell to me, right? So if you're going to be launching a course, really looking at your social media presence a few months ahead of that I think can definitely be helpful.
For sure. And if you can come up with any kind of plan or semblance of a plan to not just, you know, be staring at your phone like, oh, what am I going to say today? Because that is, I mean, that's the worst part.
Right. Yeah. So having some sort of solid social media strategy and content plan at least a few months ahead of when you're going to be launching is going to, I think, make it a lot easier in the long run. Like you said, it is going to help you show up and be consistent and make those connections that you need to make in order to sell your courses when they actually do launch. There's no doubt if you've been around for a hot minute, you know the importance of analyzing your social media data to help you reach your big business goals. But if the thought of diving into that data on your own has been holding you back from the content clarity that it can bring, I've got your back. With my quarterly data analysis service, I'm here to be your data bestie right alongside of you, diving into your analytics and outlining a content plan so that you can take effective action. This way, you get all the benefits of having your eyes on your data to help make goals for the new year without having to take a course or wade through the numbers by yourself. It's time to tap into the magic of your social media data, and you don't even have to add anything to your plate to do it. Just hop on the waitlist right now in the show notes. I know your future self will thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gotten comfortable going live. How else can we leverage social media to maximize a course launch?
Yeah, there are so many ways. So we talked about, right, like planning out a couple months ahead, if possible, which I know can be, especially if you're like doing it by yourself or mostly by yourself, or you don't have anyone helping you with social media, that can be a very daunting task. So even if you feel like you can't do several months ahead, just start with like 1 month. Just start with like 4 weeks and look at like when you want to open your cart and start selling your course. And then think about like planning backwards. So again, like we said, you're not just coming out of like the woodwork and being like, hello, buy this.
Yeah.
And then disappearing back away.
Right.
And it can also like, I mean, Instagram that's where I hang out the most. I think it's also probably where you hang out the most, but it has so many like features that are helpful for market research. Like if you can plan your polls intentionally, if you can plan and use your question boxes intentionally, the quiz feature, to kind of gain what your audience knows and what they don't know. And then you can use that. Like I think that's the other thing that even like I get hung up myself when I do this for myself. We can always do things more easily for other people.
For sure.
But you don't have to have like an exact script for every day of your of your stories. Maybe just in the first week, let's say you're launching a course about the first, like setting up good systems for your second and third grade classrooms. Maybe in the first week, you ask your audience, like in a quiz or a poll feature, like what's your biggest struggle with the first week of school or whatever. And then you just make a plan that like the day after that poll, you're just going to talk about whatever the answer is. Like you don't need a script, just as long as you have a follow-up and kind of a flow of what you think would be, best and what your audience is needing. There's a lot of great ways to leverage all of the cute little tools that Instagram has.
Yeah. And I love that you talked about market research here, because in those few months leading up to your launch, if you have an engaged audience on social media, that is like market research gold right there. I know when we were working together, some things were tweaked based on information that we were getting off of social media from what people needed and what people were looking for. And so just using that to actually inform the product that you are, the course or the membership or whatever that you are going to be launching, is just getting all of that information from those people who are your ideal customer, basically.
Sure. And you can, like, when I talk about course launch strategy, a lot of times my clients will throw in like a cart close bonus, like an extra resource if we're, talking about the TPT world, or something that they can email out to, all the people that buy. And I mean, you can pivot based on what that bonus is, based on what people are saying the entire time you're launching, which is kind of something that we ended up doing in July when we worked together. We just, you have it 80% ready and then make the other 20% up as you go.
Right. Once you like get all of that feedback and kind of like what people need and what they're looking for. And then that helps you have a more successful launch because you're delivering them something that they're actually asking for, which is the key. So
yes. And sometimes the hardest part.
So I've heard you talk a lot about using stories to gather that information, to talk about those topics around the course or whatever you're going to be launching. Are there any other like types of content? Because we know if you're using Instagram, there's a lot of different types of content that you can be putting out there that seem to work better when it comes to promoting a launch. Or do you think it is helpful to just make a variety of different types of content?
I think, again, it goes back to your analytics, unfortunately, and seeing like what your audience wants. The person that I was talking about earlier that has like the huge social media following, she was making a bunch of reels because, you hear like reels, which for most people, I think do very well. But what we kind of found towards the end of the launch is people were actually really into the carousels with like actual actionable steps. So when we reopened her cart the very end of August, we reopened it 30 days after it closed just for like a 48-hour like reopen flash sale. we lined it up. She's a bigger team, so she is a
Yeah.
full-on social media manager, and we lined it up with a couple of like multi-swipe carousels that got way more of a reach than the reels, which is, you know, you just don't know. It's just all about like paying attention to what your audience wants, which is, I mean, I think a really hard thing for some people, like including myself, because you just want to apply this like launch strategy that worked for somebody and it'll work for everybody else. But like, that's just not how life goes.
In my social media manager brain, that kind of makes sense for her because she already had such a large following. And I'm sure she had like dedicated people, and reels are really about like reach and bringing new people into your community.
Sure.
And those carousels are a lot about like education, like what those people who are already there and like dedicated to you are looking for. So it kind of makes sense to me that kind of setup was what helped her launch, because that was what her warm audience was looking for, that education piece, that informational piece.
Yeah. And I mean, that makes sense. And I feel like it's also probably, correct me if I'm wrong, because I am not the social media expert, but I feel like that's probably why a lot of her sales actually came from her stories, because her warm audience, I mean, they're the ones who are going to see the stories more than anybody else, right? Okay.
Right.
So
exactly.
That checks out.
So yeah, your followers are like the main people who are going to be seeing your stories, which makes sense that you've been talking so much about using stories, right? Because those are the people that have that connection to you to begin with. And those are the people that you really want to be talking to. Not that you don't want to bring in new people. That's great. But that's probably more for like the 3 or 4 months before you start launching, right? Is bringing those people in. But once you're getting closer, it's really about honing in on those people who are already there and already there for you and what you have to offer them. And stories is definitely the place to do it.
Yeah. Well, that all makes sense. And I'm glad it worked out.
It does. It makes sense in launch world and social media world. Any other tips or tricks for using social media for launches?
I mean, I think the biggest tip is just to not like take it all too seriously, because at the end of the day, like people, I don't know. I feel like in the last year or so, super authentic marketing has made a comeback, if you will.
Yes.
And people like want to buy from another person who might be the expert on whatever they're looking for, but like they don't need to buy from somebody who's perfect or like has every answer. So, I mean, I think just being yourself and not worried about like if everything is perfect on your feed or, you know, re-recording stories 86 times just to get one right. Like it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, people are definitely looking for that authenticity. They want to make a human connection. And that's what's going to help them want to buy from you, because they've made that connection with you and they feel connected to you and they trust you and feel like they know you. So that definitely makes a lot of sense. Awesome. I'm so happy that we got together to have this chat and that my listeners are going to hear all about using social media for course launches, because I know that there's a lot of people out in the TPT world that are working on launching courses and memberships and things like that. So before we go, where can my listeners find you if they want to learn more about launching or get some help with launching?
Yeah, absolutely. So I hang out mainly on Instagram over at Duxbury Digital. And I mean, there's a link in my bio that has a bunch of like my free resources and of course ways to work with me. But if you want to take the shortcut, my website is duxburydigital.co/resources. We'll get you all of the things, all of the free things and all the ways to work with me.
Awesome. And so I'll make sure that Melanie's Instagram link and her link to her website are right in the show notes for you, so you guys can access that. Melanie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yay. Thanks for having me.
All right, cold coffee friends, thanks so much for listening. If you're loving getting schooled in socials, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Also, I would love it if you left a review so that other teacher authors like you can start getting schooled in socials too. All right, I'll see you in the next episode.